welcome everyone. So excited you can be here today for our regular monthly series of Let's Talk Storage. Today, I'm really excited to host a panel of esteemed guests to talk about storage and the future of distributed storage. I'll have some folks from Forrester, Atempo, and Gabb Wireless. So I'll be introducing our panelists in just a moment. With that, if you have any questions, we absolutely would love to hear from you. Please do put them in the chat. We're going to hold them until the end, and then we'll spend some time afterwards addressing some of those questions. So if you have anything specifically for one of the panelists or for storage folks, go ahead and make sure you ask that question. All righty, I will jump in. First of all, let's introduce our panelists. I'm going to, I'll start down the order here. First, we'll hear from Martha and tell us a little bit about yourself, your company, and let's jump in.
Hi, and thanks very much for inviting me to this discussion. I'm a vice president and principal analyst at Forrester Research. Keeping it very brief, Forrester is a research and advisory firm. My own coverage has been blockchain from an enterprise perspective since about 2014. My background is 30 plus years in emerging tech, which is why I probably landed in that space quite so early. And when I say blockchain, I mean both from a technology perspective as well as from all the dynamics that have been happening since around Web3. And that's probably enough for now.
Certainly one of the OG in the blockchain space. Very happy to have you, Martha. Thanks. And then one of our storage partners from Atempo, Louis, I'll let you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and Atempo.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So I'm Louis Laszlo. I'm the VP of Product Management at Atempo. So a few words about Atempo. So we are an independent software vendor. We design, develop, and market software solution to help companies, organizations, from the smallest one to the largest one, to manage and to protect their data at scale. So that was naturally we decided to work with storage to bring this new approach of decentralized storage as a new option to a compatibility guide. And I think that's all at this stage.
Great, thank you so much. And then over to Alan, who's one of our customers from Gabb Wireless.
Great, yeah, I lead our cloud strategy at Gabb Wireless. Gabb Wireless is a company that focuses on kid-safe technology, mainly right now smartphones and smartwatches for children, providing a sort of default safe, non-addictive environment for them where there aren't, distractions of games or social media on our devices, at least for the younger children. And my background is in distributed and decentralized cloud storage. I've been doing that for almost 20 years.
Excellent, thank you. We have a great set of experience here. So let me start with our partner and our customers. So Louis and Alan, kind of take us back to why did you even consider storage in addition to some of the standard, I should say legacy clouds that are out there? What challenges were you trying to solve for your business, for your customers? And how did storage answer those for you? I'll jump in.
Answer that one first. So Gabb initially approached me just over a year ago to discuss what they could do for cloud. They didn't have really a plan at that time. Excuse me. And one of the options that they were considering was some sort of decentralized or distributed storage offering that they could, put in people's homes, partly as part of the storage and cloud assets. So I took them down that path of what would it take to build that, how much time, how much investment, having built something like that previously. And they said, well, how can we go faster? And I said, well, we can find a partner in this space that does something like that. And storage was at the top of that list in terms of knowing how to do decentralized storage and having the know-how to take us down that path if we wanted to preserve that optionality into the future. Now, we reduced the scope a little bit and said, let's just get our customers in the cloud in the first place. Let's back up their phones, their photos, their videos, contacts, and settings. And so that's what we've been able to deliver so far to our customers, but we have much bigger plans as we move forward.
Okay, great. And Louis, tell us a little bit about how you found storage and how you made the decision to partner.
So we had a great contact with Colby, your SVP Business Development, proposing us to discuss about how storage can enrich as a global compatibility guide of Myria. So we decided to move forward and to implement storage into our solution to continue to enrich and to guarantee the promise we have for our customers, that is to be a storage agnostic solution and to be capable to leverage data movement from any to any. So from different on-premise storage technology to the cloud, but also with this new era of storage, if I can qualify it like that, for decentralized and blockchain driven different storage technology. So that's why we decided to move forward and to implement storage, to add a new option into our compatibility guide and to offer a new option to our customers to leverage an efficient policy to conserve and to preserve their data in time.
Excellent, thank you. So those are great perspectives. I still would say that you're among probably the early adopters, and I kind of want to go back to Martha and say, with Forrester, you've been looking at this, personally and as a company for a long time. How do you evaluate these new Web3 infra and blockchain technologies? And here's two companies that are using it, have bought into the concept. What caveats and concerns have you seen in other folks getting into the Web3 tech?
It's funny you should mention early adopters. I was going to make exactly a comment in that direction, that my fellow panelists clearly know how to navigate this landscape. They know what they're looking for and what they're looking at. The majority of enterprises, dare I say, just from my own client interactions, clearly there are some early adopters everywhere. But when you look at the mainstream, I'm still having to do a lot of demystification, setting the record straight on certain misconceptions. Some of these, for example, in one question I'm still getting, believe it or not, oh no, Web3 blockchain, oh no, excessive energy consumption, we can't possibly go there. So you talk them through, no, actually that's a Bitcoin problem, and so let's move on. But there are also perfectly legitimate concerns that when you look at the wider environment of Web3, what you need to look at, is what does an enterprise actually need? And that enterprise may be a large established company, or it may be a small digitally native startup. They're all in that position where they're quite correctly concerned of, can I guarantee privacy and confidentiality? Is this secure? Will it scale? Can I actually have some form of contractual certainty here? I'm an enterprise delivering to my customers. I can't afford relationships where I don't have any kind of guarantee of how much it will cost, for instance. And that also brings me to another point where it is today the case that most enterprises just do not want to go anywhere near anything to do with cryptocurrency, because what it means from their accounting perspective, potential complications, being exposed to the volatility that you often see. So there are some concerns that are, how shall we say, are simply a fact of life if you want something enterprise grade. Most of what we see out there isn't there yet. But a lot of enterprises also still don't necessarily see that we are beginning to see enterprise grade solutions emerge that do have some of the characteristics that my fellow panelists were looking for as well, and that can be delivered in a way that is compatible with enterprise demands.
Great thoughts there. Lots of caveats. I did hear you say enterprise grade, which is absolutely where we see that this technology has to be to service folks like Alan and like Louis. So I'd love to hear a little bit more from you both. How did you, address those concerns? You certainly must have kind of seen some of those caveats going in, but you worked through it or talked through it with storage. So I'd love to hear how you mitigated some of those risks and caveats.
Great. So for us, and for me in particular, it's actually quite a big selling point for decentralized technologies that they can be not just as secure and as reliant and as fast and as reliable, as durable as traditional cloud services, but they can be more so. And in particular, this is a point that I made with journalists and companies and employees at a previous endeavor where we were doing some sort of decentralized storage. You look at the security of traditional cloud, and when you have physical control of all of the servers in a tightly controlled data center, you can often take some shortcuts with technology itself that lessen security. Whereas when you're creating a service on top of assets that you don't necessarily control, you have to get the security model right, and you have to get it right from the beginning. So those are all attractive features for us. I think the connection to cryptocurrency is in service to that. It's not the feature. Like, we're not interested in storage because there's a crypto involved at any level. From a practical standpoint, we're interested in those other attributes that arise out of this because it is in a decentralized form.
Thank you for that. And Alan, you had an echo there. I wonder if you can. We'll pop over to Louis, but just so you know, there was an echo there on your sound. If you could try and reconnect. But thank you for that answer. Really interesting. I think there is something there I might want to jump into later about the in service with crypto, not based on crypto. But let me turn it over to Louis to see how you went about your evaluation to look for this enterprise grade.
It's a very good point about cryptocurrency, blockchain in general. So storage is not the first decentralized storage approach we see on the market. There is plenty of different other solutions available on the market, but from my point of view and from the Atempo point of view, storage succeed at tackling challenges and pain points around decentralized storage technology by easing and democratizing the decentralized storage. So to have something more accessible, more easy to use for enterprise as a storage, like they already use different cloud provider by. So that's why we see, and that's why the different things we identify when we decided to qualify storage as a solution or portfolio, because it brings a new way, an interesting way for decentralized storage with this advantage: accessibility, distribution, availability of data anywhere, anytime. And also, Martin mentioned that the cost at the end of the day, all these points on an easy way without doing to provision a wallet with different token and so on. That's not fully incompatible with an enterprise management. So I think storage and the offer brings on the market by storage offer all the advantages of Web 3.0 ecosystem in a Web 0 way. I don't know, it's obvious.
No, that sounds great. So that's a great perspective from what I'd call some early adopters. But Martha, kind of looking back at what you do with your clients, how do you advise them? What do you recommend if you're going to start evaluating these Web3 type vendors? And how do you ensure that they have that enterprise grade? Some of the other caveats that you mentioned earlier.
At the risk of sounding a little flippant, I tell them to evaluate them against enterprise grade criteria. and to be as tough as they need to be. And quite often, in particular, when firms are dealing with smaller firms or startups or whoever it may be, do double due diligence if you feel that is required. That is absolutely okay. What I also and to the point that was made already as well, there are lots of other solutions out there. When I say lots, maybe that's overstating a bit, but there are other so-called decentralized Web3 storage solutions out there. And a lot of these quite simply would fail at the first hurdle from an enterprise perspective if you're going through those questions, like, for example, can I control where my data is actually going to reside? Can I avoid a direct exposure to cryptocurrency? Can I preserve confidentiality? Do I have an actual contract? Do I have reliable pricing, and so on? Those are all legitimate questions. But what I'd also broaden it out into, and something that Louis said sparked that in my mind, that there is also a lot of Web3 ideology out there that quite often gets in the way, and sometimes even gets in the way of reality, in that, and at the risk of sounding a little controversial, complete decentralization doesn't actually exist because it's not manageable. Just look at the internet. We've got possibly the world's most decentralized protocol, the IP protocol, and yet how to access resources on the internet, we have a very hierarchical system, and that's what we need, because otherwise we just have chaos. Yes, we can have a separate discussion about the governance model, and that's obviously not for today, but my point is that there are Web3 purists out there, and I tell my clients, don't listen to those, because aside from the fact that there's a lot of what I call decentralization theater in Web3, where there is a pretense of decentralization, but you have central control points, except that there is no proper governance model around them. What we need is let me call it a grown-up discussion around where certain central control points are actually needed for smooth running, because that is entirely compatible with decentralization, as we've just amply discussed here.
Yeah, those are really good points. I think we could spend the whole next hour talking about any of those, specifically around, is it decentralized or not? Should you care? Do you care? So that's a very great one in bringing this enterprise compatibility and reliability. The other point that I heard the panelists bring up is security. And we certainly look at security overall with centralized assets as a target for hackers. Does decentralized architectures offer any advantage over centralized storage? Is this something that is, kind of on the plus side for a decentralized architecture? I wonder if anyone wants to jump in with those thoughts.
Let me just ask first, can you hear me better now than before? Okay, great. Apologize for my headphones before. Yeah, as I was saying before, I think that's a huge advantage. It's much easier to scrutinize a system that has some open source components in it that you can look at, as storage does. It's much easier to trust a system that is built in a hostile environment than one that's built in a friendly environment. I know that's a little bit contrarian. Much of our industry would prefer to ensconce into safe havens where you have some other advantages, and certainly those systems are easier to build because you don't have to build for certain attack vectors. You don't have to build for an attack vector where a person has physical access to a hard drive that has data stored on it. But when you do have to build in that environment, you have to build a system that is absolutely hardened against it, and the whole thing collapses if you don't. And so I think there's a lot of assurance that you get there from decentralization.
Right. Any other thoughts, Martha or Louis?
Yeah, so I take my hat of data protection software vendor, and especially talking about backup. So enterprise today involve cloud storage, as a target for backup, and they put in place backup strategy with at least one copy of sites hosted in the cloud. The advantage with storage we see is that instead of having just one copy or two copies, but at double price in traditional legacy cloud storage vendor, decentralization brings a way to distribute my data across different nodes and to have the guarantee that all my data will still available when I will need it for restoration in case of major incident. So what we see with decentralization is this capability to have multiple copy at the same price without doing multiple copy. All the protocol and the conception of the storage offers that directly. So that we see, and it's a big advantage we see with this with solution, to offer this capability to distribute and to do some erasure coding in the cloud without any extra fee, without any operation, configuration, manual operation to do replication, copy, and so on to different nodes. You have guarantee that all your data will be distributed across the world on different nodes, and the guarantee to have an access and availability of the data all the time. So that's a very big advantage to take all data protection challenge, and especially the ransomware protection with this offer.
And if I can add another perspective, and I should actually admit, I'm not a storage expert, I'm not an operations expert. However, I do know from just what you see, what happens when somebody has had a major outage, whether it's a ransomware attack or a hardware failure or whatever. A lot of the time, the restore from backup is a major task, and sometimes it's also quite a struggle. Whereas if you're looking at it from the non-storage expert perspective, if you're working on the principle that you don't actually have the recovery scenario because you've got that resilience built in, yes, I know it's early days, but that's where I would say is definitely an advantage, in particular as we're increasingly in an environment where I really like the point that Alan was making on things need to be hardened, because when you look at the increasing amount of effort and how far ahead in many cases the criminals are, or in some cases it might be state actors as well, but whoever is on the attack, that cat and mouse game will continue. So the more we can have in the arsenal to help with that, the better.
Yeah, absolutely. I think at least from the storage perspective, security and a different approach to it, that truly a zero trust architecture is one of the main interests that we're seeing from some of our customers and partners. It's distributed, which is also what Louis was talking about too, is that you're automatically geo-distributed. So there's a lot of things. Again, won't go into it here, but we're happy to answer any questions about that there. So security, great potential benefit there. I want to kind of throw it back over to the panel, maybe even starting with Martha. Again, looking at you talk to a lot of enterprise clients. What are some of the best use cases? We have two use cases here. We have kind of a backup use case with Atempo. We have a cloud storage layer with Alan. Like, what are some of the other use cases that you would suggest, and how enterprises can start to investigate what would be a good fit to get into and start to consider Web3?
I'd probably, at the risk of sounding a little bit evasive, there are so many organization-specific aspects to taking those decisions. It's kind of difficult to reduce it to a set of use cases. I'd look more at the criteria, and one of them certainly is actually a willingness to engage with a different way of doing things. And that is less about the technology per se, but a company actually being ready to do that. If I look back to, for example, now we find it difficult to remember now when people say cloud is not for me, I will never go there, or something like that. When we look at our data today, what was it? I think something like 91% of organizations are in the cloud, not necessarily exclusively, but the cloud is a given these days. There are hybrid models. Also, the fact that people are going multi-cloud clearly shows that there is a desire for diversification, not being overly dependent on one company. I would look at companies that are already very much on top of their cloud strategies and say, do you actually have use cases? Alan's being a classic example where you want to offer something different in a different way. Obviously, if you do need to look at, when you say, well, let's use that, then the advice, whatever that may be, are you, is it to do with streaming? Is it to do with photo storage? Is it whatever it might be? Really actually look at what your end-to-end requirements are and how the storage element fits into that, because then you can actually assess what it is. Yes, you're looking for a different way of doing things. Does it meet my requirements in other ways as well? And then I can look at the extra benefits that I can get. But I would also say you really need to look at it as well from the perspective, if you're in a regulated industry, just in case there are any gotchas, because there are sometimes requirements. And as we've already discussed, when you look at data sovereignty, there are many ways in which to make that happen today. Is it the way in which it's expected, or are there some regulatory aspects? And that's the one that I would really focus on. Is everything in place from a performance perspective, that you don't get nasty surprises? And also, have you made sure that you talk with risk and compliance? One, in engaging with a different way of doing things, and two, is there a potential regulatory exposure? And on that point, I will make a final point. Don't allow anybody to hide behind regulation, because I've actually found that as well, including GDPR, for instance, where companies have hidden behind GDPR in order not to share particular data internal to their own organization, when in fact what they were proposing to do was perfectly within the scope of the regulation. So all that needs to be taken into consideration. Apologies for the lengthy and quite evasive answer.
No worries at all. So I'd love to see if Louis or Ellen, you have any other kind of recommendations, things to build on for how, what use cases, how you actually started to investigate, anything that you would kind of say as a best practice recommendation.
Yeah, I would like to complete the Martha points about hybrid environment and multi-cloud vision. So what we see, it's with all customers we met in Fortune 500, in average, they involve at least 3 different cloud storage vendors. So we have seen in the last decade, cloud has been an Eldorado. A lot of enterprise push everything, every workload to the cloud, and now some of them are already coming back. We see reverse cloud migration to come back to come back on premise. So now, if you consider storage as the global picture of storage ecosystem, all organization, all enterprise put in place hybrid environment with different storage technology because of business needs, because of business unit needs. They have to leverage different storage technology and also to take all the price versus performance and availability and security equation. So they need to put in place an hybrid environment, and it's where Atempo helps this kind of organization to make the glue of all storage silo for backup, for archiving, for migration, synchronization, or just move and demand. So storage can complete the global picture, but it's not the absolute solution for everything, and has to be considered as the correct way to tackle some of the challenges of the organization and of the enterprise. So that's how we envision the partnership with storage and the integration of storage. And from an evaluation point of view, it has been quite easy from a marketing value proposal point of view, we have seen common interests to take all challenges we cover since the beginning of the session. And from a technical point of view, it was very simple because the S3 compatibility of the offer, it was very simple to implement to guarantee. And it's a point I think we will continue to cover in next question. This ease of integration. Easy integration possible to leverage the sport. Sorry, Alan, I have taken all your time.
No, that's okay.
No,
We're hearing some great themes in there about alternative clouds and other options. So go ahead, Alan, jump in there. That was great.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say I agree with both what Martha and Louis have said. For us, it was really easy to evaluate because I think we're in sort of a golden age from a technologies perspective with cloud technologies where we do have some common layers that are shared between different providers, right? And so storage as DCS, for example, is S3 compatible, which means there's a lot of comfort in being able to try, even if you have doubts or concerns about one provider's capabilities, you can try it out and you can swap between them with minimal effort. And that's, I think, a huge advantage to a company like storage or to being able to prove your technology in the enterprise. It's a little bit of a double-edged sword, though, because it also means people can switch away from you if they find it insufficient. In our case, we tried with 2 or 3 just to make sure that we could switch, so we had a backup plan, and found that we were very, very happy keeping almost all of our data on storage. So I think that's something that the enterprises should consider as well. Like, what is their plan for not getting locked in, for being able to move quickly between solutions? A lot of our most prominent cloud providers try really hard to lock you into their solutions through a lot of different clever, whether they're pricing tricks or complementary technologies that they try to get you involved in that they can't transfer. And those are things that I think enterprises need to be aware of when they're evaluating.
Great things to think about. I do realize that we're just about running out of time, meaning I do want to leave some time for questions. I haven't been monitoring, but yeah, let's answer a few questions, then maybe we can kind of have the panelists end with some closing thoughts. But yeah, let's try and see if there's any great questions that we should answer. I think, Aaron, you're on deck for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So while folks are adding any questions that you might have, we did have one, and it kind of is a little bit more of an elaboration, I think, of what you were just talking about, but maybe looking at it from a slightly different perspective. So for any of our panelists, would you say that there were any surprises that you found when you were working with storage? And maybe you can talk to either the value that you got, the benefits that you saw, or the integration effort.
I can start with a piece of beginning of answer. What we has been surprised. So at some point I thought during the presentation today, discussion today, it's an easy integration because it's presented as a Web 3.0 technology, but it's accessible like any cloud storage vendor on the market with an S3 integration, easy integration. It was really plug and play from our point of view. And what we has been very surprised, even it's a decentralized storage, even if it's a new concept, new architecture, new kind of technology, we have been very surprised by the performances we reach, and we succeed at reaching with a solution, even in very large and complex configuration. So very big surprise and good surprise. We see.
For us, I don't think I was particularly surprised about this, but I continue to get surprised glances from other executives in the company when we talk about the economics. And that's one thing that we haven't really discussed much, is that decentralized solutions can provide economic advantages in terms of cost, which allows companies that use them to create value for their customers by being able to offer more or better or optimizing margins as well. And so that's been not so much a surprise to me, but a surprise to I think Gabb Wireless is just how affordable it is to provide cloud services to our customers, and that's been a great surprise for them.
Excellent, thanks. We did have another question come in, and this is more kind of getting your perspective on the outlook for the future. So the question is about some folks are saying that decentralization could become as common as encryption because of the benefits of being impervious to ransomware and other factors. So they were just curious what your thoughts are. Is the future decentralized?
If I if I grab the mic, so to speak, in many ways, yes. And we already have examples whereby in some cases, entire countries realize that because they're potentially at the receiving end of a cyber attack, they need to do different things with their data. And that might even include, in the extreme case, actually setting up a sovereign enclave with storage in another country. Which is clearly, a cumbersome and expensive way to set about it. But yes, I personally do think that's the direction of travel, but going back as well to we do need to look at the governance models and how everything is administered, because there are potential downsides as well. But what I would add to, maybe as a closing thought, is what companies need to think about as well is not just their storage requirements today, but also what they might want to be offering in future in terms of services. Because when you look at some of the major shifts that we're seeing, whether it's in the way mobility is provided or in their own business is evolving, they're just wanting to add services from a competitive perspective. Those are all the points when you also want to think about, how do I deliver this in a way that minimizes the risk of my customer data being exposed or my company being taken down. End of lecture.
Any other closing thoughts from the panelists?
I think for me, just that it's still an exciting time, that we're still in early days in a lot of these technologies, and it's fun to, as Martha pointed out before, there's a lot of reluctance in larger enterprises and traditional companies to experiment and to really grab onto this stuff. But I think from a technologist perspective, it's a lot of fun, and that fun translates into value for companies, in that you can attract better talent when you're doing interesting things. And that helps enterprises, helps their customers, helps everybody.
That's a really great thought. How about from you, Louis? Any final thoughts?
Oh, I think we cover all the points today, and I hope we bring the interesting points to all the attendees today, and we cover all the major questions today. I'm very excited to follow the evolution enhancements you will bring in future with storage, because I see many different opportunities where the technology can be a very big differentiator, especially in research and universities. How storage can help researchers across the world to share and to their facility, their storage, and so on. So I'm very excited to follow and to continue with you in the future to continue to enrich our joint value proposal to the market.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's another great use case we didn't even touch on, is as university researchers sharing big data. But we'll save that for another webinar. So with that, we are going to wrap it up. I want to say thank you so much to our panelists. We really appreciate your time, your insights, your expertise, and your partnership with storage. Thank you, Martha, Alan, and Louis. Really great to talk to you. We'll be following up with some email, more information on where you can find Gabb and Atempo and Forrester. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day.